The 90s gave us some of the strangest sci-fi horror films ever made. Movies filled with underground monsters, alien parasites, collapsing realities, infected cities, haunted spaceships, and creatures that looked like they crawled directly out of someone's nightmare. And the weirdest part is that a lot of them were ignored when they first released. Some were overshadowed by bigger blockbusters, some confused audiences completely, and others slowly found cult status years later through DVDs, late-night TV, and internet recommendations. But looking back now, these films feel far more interesting than many polished modern releases because they weren't afraid to get weird, unsettling, or completely unpredictable. They mixed horror with science fiction in ways studios rarely take risks on anymore. Practical effects instead of endless CGI, grimy atmosphere instead of clean digital worlds, and stories that actually trusted the audience to keep up. From paranoid alien invasions and shape-shifting creatures to psychological mind-benders and cosmic nightmares, these movies created worlds that still feel unique decades later. So tonight, we're going back to the era when sci-fi horror was messy, ambitious, creepy, and genuinely unforgettable. Let's get into it. Number 10. Ghosts of Mars, 2001. John Carpenter is a god of sci-fi horror, but even gods have a bad day at the office. By the time 2001 rolled around, the man who gave us The Thing and Halloween decided he wanted to make a Western. The catch? He wanted to set it on the Red Planet and fill it with possessed, self-mutilating miners. Ghosts of Mars is essentially a siege movie, a trope Carpenter perfected with Assault on Precinct 13. The premise is actually pretty cool. It's the year 2176, and Mars has been terraformed for human colonization. But when a police unit, led by Natasha Henstridge and a very 90s cool Ice Cube, goes to a remote mining outpost to transport a prisoner, they find out that the miners have accidentally unleashed an ancient Martian mist that turns people into bloodthirsty tribal warriors. So why did it vanish? Well, it was a box office disaster. It came out in the same era as The Matrix, and audiences were starting to crave sleek, high-tech CGI. Carpenter, being an old-school rebel, went the opposite direction. He used practical miniatures, heavy makeup, and a heavy metal soundtrack composed by himself and Anthrax. To 2001 audiences, it felt dated. To us today, it feels like a glorious, unapologetic B-movie throwback. The world building is surprisingly deep, featuring a matriarchal society where women run the government and the military, which was a bold choice for an action flick at the time. Plus, the villain design is genuinely unsettling. These aren't just aliens, they're spirits that turn humans into spike-wearing goth metal nightmares. It's loud, it's messy, and the flashback within a flashback structure is a bit of a head-scratcher, but Ghosts of Mars is the last time we got to see Carpenter play with a big studio budget and a wild, let's-see-what-sticks attitude. If you want a movie that feels like a heavy metal album cover come to life, this is the one you missed. Number 9. The Fly 2, 1989. Living in the shadow of a masterpiece is a death sentence for most sequels, and following up David Cronenberg's 1986 remake of The Fly was an impossible task. While the first film was a tragic operatic romance about a man losing his humanity, The Fly 2 decides to lean entirely into being a mad science revenge thriller. We follow the son of the original protagonist, Martin Brundle, who is born in a corporate lab and ages at an accelerated rate. By the time he's technically 5 years old, he's a fully grown man played by Eric Stoltz, realizing that the company keeping him safe is actually just waiting for his dormant insect DNA to wake up and take over. So why did it vanish? Most critics at the time dismissed it as a gore fest that lacked the emotional weight of the first film. It was the tail end of the 80s, and the market was becoming oversaturated with sequels that prioritized body counts over plot. But if you look past the simpler story, you'll find some of the most jaw-dropping practical effects ever put on celluloid. Directed by Chris Wallace, the guy who actually won an Oscar for the makeup in the first movie, the transformation sequences here are brutal, slimy, and genuinely heartbreaking. The final Brundlefly creature is a massive puppeteered marvel that looks more terrifying than anything a modern computer could render. It's a movie that rewards fans of muck and yuck horror, offering a satisfying, albeit dark, closure to the Brundle legacy. It's a heavy, gooey reminder of an era when monsters were built by hand, and it deserves way more credit for its sheer technical ambition. Number 8. Species, 1995. In the mid-95, Hollywood was obsessed with the biological thriller, but Species took that obsession and turned it into something much more dangerous and visually striking. The film kicks off with a premise that feels like it was ripped straight from a late-night conspiracy forum. SETI receives a transmission from deep space containing DNA sequences and instructions on how to combine them with human genetics. Instead of being cautious, the scientists, led by a cold and calculated Ben Kingsley, decide to play God. The result is Syl, a creature that looks like a beautiful woman but possesses a predatory instinct that makes a great white shark look like a house pet. What makes Species such a fascinating time capsule is the sheer amount of talent involved. You have a dream team cast including Michael Madsen, Forrest Whitaker, and Alfred Molina, all hunting down a genetically engineered femme fatale. So why did it vanish into the bargain bins of history? Despite being a massive hit at the time, it was overshadowed by the looming arrival of big-budget CGI spectacles like Independence Day. It sat in that awkward middle ground between high-concept sci-fi and trashy horror, causing many critics to dismiss it as a B-movie with an A-list budget. But here's why it's a total must-watch today: the creature design. The production brought in H.R. Giger, the legendary surrealist who designed the original Alien, to create Syl's true form. The result is a biomechanical nightmare of transparent skin, shifting bones, and lethal elegance that looks absolutely incredible in high definition. It's a movie that explores the nature versus nurture debate through the lens of a monster movie, asking if a creature programmed to survive at any cost can ever truly be evil. It captures the sleek, paranoid pre-millennium aesthetic of 1995 perfectly, and while the sequels went off the rails, the original remains a tight, stylish, and genuinely creepy look at what happens when we invite the stars into our DNA. If you want a movie that balances high-end art with pure popcorn thrills, Species is the hybrid you've been looking for. Number 7, Mimic, 1997. Before he was winning Oscars for The Shape of Water or taking us to Pan's Labyrinth, Guillermo del Toro made his big-budget Hollywood debut with a movie about the things that crawl in the dark. Mimic takes a terrifying biological concept and turns it into a masterclass in atmospheric dread. The story starts with an ecological crisis. Manhattan is being ravaged by a deadly Strickler's disease carried by cockroaches, which is specifically killing the city's children. To stop it, an entomologist played by Mira Sorvino creates the Judas breed, a genetically engineered insect designed to infiltrate the roach colony and wipe it out. The plan works, and the Judas breed was supposed to die off after one generation. But as we've learned from every sci-fi movie ever made, life finds a way. Years later, these insects haven't just survived, they've evolved. They've grown to the size of men, and they've developed the ability to mimic the appearance of humans by folding their wings to look like long trench coats. So, why did it vanish? The production was a notorious nightmare. Del Toro famously clashed with the studio, Miramax, who wanted a fast-paced jump scare movie, while he wanted a slow-burn gothic creature feature. The result was a theatrical cut that the director initially disowned, leading the movie to be forgotten by the general public as just another bug movie from the late 90s. However, if you watch it now, especially the director's cut, it is a stunning piece of horror. The cinematography is drenched in amber and shadows, making the New York subway system feel like a literal descent into hell. It's a movie that plays on our primal fear of the dark and the uncanny valley, that feeling when something looks human, but your instincts tell you it's a predator. With its incredible creature designs and a haunting score, Mimic is a reminder that the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones from other planets, but the ones we accidentally invited to live in our basements. It's a beautifully grim, intellectual horror film that was far ahead of its time. Number 6, The Faculty, 1998. If you want to know exactly what 1998 felt like, you just have to watch The Faculty. It is the ultimate cool kid of 90s sci-fi horror, directed by Robert Rodriguez and written by Kevin Williamson, the man who redefined the decade with Scream. The setup is a brilliant twist on Invasion of the Body Snatchers. A group of high school archetypes, the jock, the geek, the goth, and the drug dealer, realize that their teachers are being replaced by parasitic aliens that need water to survive. To stay alive, these students have to stop fighting each other and start fighting a faculty that wants to assimilate the entire town. So, why did it vanish? It didn't exactly disappear, but it became a victim of its own trendiness. Because it was so rooted in the MTV-style editing and pop rock aesthetic of the late 90s, it was often dismissed as a shallow teen scream flick rather than a legitimate sci-fi contender. But watching it today, the movie is a total blast. The ensemble cast is arguably one of the best ever assembled for a horror movie, featuring early roles for Elijah Wood and Josh Hartnett, alongside heavyweights like Robert Patrick and Salma Hayek. It perfectly captures that teenage feeling of us versus them, where the adults in your life feel like actual aliens who don't understand you. The special effects are a charming mix of late 90s CGI and gross-out practical puppetry, and the pace is so fast it never gives you a second to breathe. It's a movie that balances self-aware humor with genuine tension, making it the perfect time capsule of an era when sci-fi was loud, rebellious, and wore a leather jacket. It's the smartest dumb movie you'll ever see, and it holds up as a masterclass in popcorn entertainment. Number 5. Body Snatchers, 1993. While most people point to the 1956 original or the 1978 remake as the definitive versions of this story, the 1993 version, directed by Abel Ferrara, is arguably the most terrifying and underrated of them all. This isn't just another alien invasion movie, it's a cold, clinical look at the total erasure of the human soul. The setting is moved from a sleepy town to a high-security military base in Alabama, the perfect place for an alien takeover because following orders and not showing emotion is already part of the daily routine. We follow Marty, the teenage daughter of an EPA scientist, as she slowly realizes that the people around her are being replaced by emotionless duplicates grown from giant slimy pods. So why did it vanish? It had a disastrous release strategy. Despite receiving a glowing review from Roger Ebert, who gave it 4 stars, the studio barely put it in theaters. It arrived in the middle of a crowded year for sci-fi and was quickly buried, leading many to believe it was just a cheap cash-in on an old franchise. But here is why it's a masterpiece. The atmosphere is suffocating. Ferrara uses the military backdrop to explore themes of conformity and the loss of identity in a way that feels incredibly modern. The special effects are also some of the most unsettling in the series. The pod birth scenes are genuinely gross, and the way the Snatchers point and emit that iconic, blood-curdling shriek will stay with you long after the credits roll. It's a movie that doesn't rely on explosions or big action set pieces. Instead, it builds a sense of dread so thick you can almost feel it. It captures that 90s anxiety of not belonging, and by placing the story on a military base, it asks a haunting question. In a world where everyone is taught to act the same, how would you even know if your neighbor had been replaced? If you want a sci-fi horror film that prioritizes psychological terror and a grim, uncompromising tone, this 1993 gem is the peak of the franchise. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the scariest thing isn't a monster from space, but the sight of your own family looking at you with empty, lifeless eyes. Number 4. Event Horizon, 1997. There is space horror, and then there is Event Horizon. This movie is legendary, not just for what we see on screen, but for the lost footage that was reportedly so gruesome it made test audiences faint. The story follows a rescue crew in the year 2047, led by Lawrence Fishburne and the ship's original designer, played by Sam Neill. They are sent to investigate a starship that vanished years ago and has suddenly reappeared near Neptune. They soon discover that the ship's experimental gravity drive didn't just fold space, it opened a gateway to a dimension of pure, literal chaos. As the crew realizes the ship has become a living, breathing entity that feeds on their worst fears, the mission turns into a desperate fight for their souls. So, why did it vanish? Upon its release in 1997, it was a critical and commercial flop. The studio, Paramount, was in a rush to release it and forced director Paul W.S. Anderson to cut nearly 30 minutes of footage, leaving the theatrical version feeling disjointed to critics at the time. It was also overshadowed by the massive hype of Titanic later that year. But over the last 2 decades, Event Horizon has transformed into a massive cult classic. It is essentially The Shining set on a spaceship, trading the aliens and the vents trope for something much more terrifying: supernatural psychological torment. The production design is incredible, featuring a ship that looks more like a Gothic cathedral than a NASA vessel, complete with spinning blades and spikes. It's one of the few movies that successfully blends hard science fiction with religious horror, posing the terrifying question, what if we went to reach for the stars and accidentally touched hell? If you're looking for a movie that will stick with you long after the credits roll and make you think twice about the void of space, this is the absolute peak of 90s cosmic horror. It's brutal, visionary, and remains one of the most intense cinematic experiences of the decade. Number 3. Cube, 1997. While Hollywood was busy spending hundreds of millions on CGI explosions, a small team in Canada created one of the most terrifying and influential sci-fi films of all time on a shoestring budget. Cube is the ultimate high-concept thriller. 6 complete strangers wake up in a giant, surreal prison made of interconnected cubic rooms. Some rooms are safe, others contain ingenious, deadly traps that can shred a person in seconds. They have no idea how they got there, who built the structure, or why they were chosen. The only way out is to use their collective skills, math, physics, and logic, to navigate the maze. So, why did it vanish? Being an independent Canadian film, it didn't have the massive marketing machine of a studio blockbuster. It relied almost entirely on word of mouth and late-night cable airings to find its audience. But its impact on the genre was massive. Without Cube, we likely wouldn't have the Saw franchise or the modern escape room horror craze. What makes it hold up so well today is the psychological tension. As the characters realize the system they are trapped in might not even have a purpose, they begin to turn on each other. The movie suggests that the most dangerous thing in the cube isn't the acid sprays or the wire traps. It's the person standing next to you when they lose hope. The minimalist industrial design is timeless, and the mystery is never fully explained, leaving you with a sense of cosmic dread that lingers long after the credits roll. It's a masterclass in how to build a world using a single set and a brilliant idea, proving that the most effective sci-fi happens inside the human mind. If you want a movie that's as intellectually challenging as it is visceral, you need to enter the cube. Number 2. Dark City, 1998. Before The Matrix changed the world by asking if our reality was a simulation, director Alex Proyas gave us Dark City, a movie that explored the exact same concept but with way more style and a much darker, noir-drenched heart. The film follows John Murdoch, a man who wakes up in a bathtub with no memory, only to find himself in a city where the sun never rises and the streets shift and rearrange themselves every night at midnight. He soon discovers that the city is being controlled by the Strangers, pale telepathic beings who are experimenting on human memories to find what makes us human. So, why did it vanish? This is one of the most tragic cases of bad timing in film history. It was released just 1 year before The Matrix, which had a bigger budget, more cool action, and better marketing. While The Matrix became a cultural phenomenon, Dark City was relegated to the cult classic bin. But here's the thing. Many critics, including the legendary Roger Ebert, actually argued that Dark City was the superior film. The production design is a stunning mix of 1940s detective aesthetics and futuristic nightmare fuel, with buildings that grow and shrink like living organisms. It's a deeply philosophical movie that deals with the nature of the soul, asking if we are just a collection of memories or if there is something deeper that makes us who we are. The visual effects, mostly done with incredible practical models and clever lighting, still look breathtaking today. It's a poetic, haunting, and visually revolutionary piece of sci-fi that deserves a spot in the pantheon of the greats. If you want a movie that will make you question the very ground you walk on, Dark City is the masterpiece you've been looking for. It's not just a movie, it's a fever dream that you never want to wake up from. Number 1. Tremors, 1990. We've reached the top of the list, and it belongs to a movie that is often described by film students and screenwriters as mechanically perfect. Tremors is the gold standard of the sci-fi horror comedy. Set in the isolated, dusty town of Perfection, Nevada, the story follows 2 handymen, played with legendary chemistry by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, who discover that their valley is being hunted by graboids, giant prehistoric subterranean worms that hunt by sound. What follows is a high-stakes game of the floor is lava, as the townspeople have to find a way to cross the desert without ever touching the ground. So, why did it vanish? Like many movies on this list, it was a victim of bad marketing. The studio didn't know how to sell a Western monster comedy, and it underperformed in theaters. But when it hit the home video market, it exploded, becoming one of the most rented tapes of the 1990s. Here is why Tremors takes the number 1 spot. It's a smart movie pretending to be a dumb one. Every single character is intelligent. Nobody dies because they made a movie mistake. They die because the creatures are genuinely clever and keep adapting to human tactics. The script is a masterclass in setup and payoff. If you see a character mention a specific tool or skill in the first 10 minutes, you can bet it's going to be the thing that saves their life or fails them spectacularly in the finale. The practical effects are still breathtaking today, using full-scale puppets and miniatures that feel much more real and dangerous than modern CGI. It manages to be genuinely tense and frightening while maintaining a sense of humor that never feels forced. It's a movie about community, ingenuity, and regular people facing the impossible. Whether you're watching it for the first time or the 50th, Tremors remains a flawless piece of entertainment that proves you don't need a dark, brooding tone to create a sci-fi masterpiece. It is quite simply perfection. So how many of these 90s relics have you actually seen? Whether it's the existential dread of Dark City or the desert-dwelling chaos of Tremors, these films prove that the 90s were a golden age for experimental, high-concept sci-fi that wasn't afraid to get a little weird. It was an era where practical effects and bold ideas reigned supreme, long before the superhero genre took over the box office. If we missed your favorite forgotten gem, or if you think Event Horizon deserved that #1 spot, let us know in the comments below. We love a good cinematic debate. Before you head out to start your 90s movie marathon, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the movies that time forgot. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.